Please welcome Kirsten Barnes, Luanda Satorio, Thokozani Masilela, Linda Godfrey, Kavinyan Dorasamy, and Kevin OBrien as they discuss how we transition towards a circular economy for plastics.
Well, welcome back to this concluding session at the your first ever, I'm sure, socially distanced Sustainability Summit brought to you by Safripol. It's been a really insightful couple of days for me personally, just seeing how the various role players in the value chain and the plastics ecosystem are approaching this issue of plasticking responsibly. And that really is the big take-home message for me. There was an announcement during the lunch break on the JSE that Netcare and Standard Bank have just launched Africa's first sustainability-linked bond. So if you think we're having these conversations in a vacuum, we certainly aren't. The coupon rate of these bonds is going to be linked to Netcare achieving certain targets around its own sustainability performance, things like reducing energy consumption, procuring more renewables, reducing its total carbon emissions, water efficiency. So it's a conversation that cuts across all industries and sectors in the country at the moment. So I thought that was quite interesting. But I'd like to preface this panel before I go around the panel and ask everyone just for a quick introduction with the problem statement. And allow me to read this because the wording of the problem statement is really important. Waste plastic has become an issue of global concern as a highly visible environmental pollutant. And the science shows that to reduce the impact of plastic on the environment, we need to look at immediate implementation of strategies that include reduction and substitution where it makes sense to do so, improved waste management, and the growth of downstream mechanical recycling. There is no single silver bullet to solve for the plastic problem. So with that, we've invited a panel of experts from the plastics value chain to talk about how practically the local plastics industry can move forward towards this circular economy. I'm just going to go around the panel briefly and ask each of our panelists in the Zoom room today, starting with Mr. Luanda Satorio, just to introduce themselves, nothing more than a minute or two as to who you are, what you do. Luanda, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Luanda Satorio. I'm a member of the African Reclaimers Organization. I'm a reclaimer also. So the guys that you see on the streets collecting plastic materials, trolleys, yes, that is us. We have organized ourselves into one organization that can be able to represent the word of the workers and to be able to negotiate and speak with other members of the plastic economy on issues of plastic and the issues of the informal sector.
Thanks, Luanda. Great to have the informal sector involved in these conversations. I've been at many events where often attempts have been made or either the delegate couldn't arrive or the sector was just ignored altogether. So I think a very important voice. Then we've got Kavinyan Dorasamy of Unilever. Kavinyan?
Thanks, Michael. I work at Unilever. I look after rigid plastics for Africa and also procurement end-to-end for Southeast Africa. And the plastic sustainability is very much a part of my agenda and my targets. Thanks.
Short, sharp and sweet. That's what I like to hear. Dr. Kirsten Barnes of the SA Plastics Pact.
Thank you very much, Michael. So I'm from Green Cape. I'm part of the circular economy team, and as Green Cape, we're an NGO which is set up to facilitate growth in a green and circular economy focused on South Africa, but with a vision for a thriving, prosperous Africa built on a green and circular economy. We are also the Secretariat for the South African Plastics Pact, and I'm very excited to share this platform today with some of our members, with Luanda of Arrow, Kevin of SPAR, and Kavinyan of Unilever. And as the SA Plastics Pact, we're a collaborative platform driving a circular economy for plastics in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. And Kevin OBrien of SPAR, happy St. Paddy's.
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much. Yes, way back in the roots somewhere, there's some Irishness around, although my wife is actually Irish, but be that as it may. Thank you very much for the opportunity just to obviously introduce myself. I'm Kevin OBrien. I'm the Group Risk and Sustainability and Strategy Executive at the SPAR Group Limited. And we're a company with a purpose, and I think we've lots to learn. But I think with the right approach, you can achieve anything. I also serve as the chair of the steering committee of the South African Plastics Pact, and obviously we're very close with Kirsten with regard to that. So thank you very much again for having me.
Well, if your wife is Irish, I mean, that pretty much means you're Irish, doesn't it? So, Kevin, Mr. Thokozani.
Michael, yes, I got an Irish passport by marrying my wife. Yes.
Mr. Thokozani Masilela from the DTIC.
Hi, good afternoon, fellow panelists and Michael. My name is Thokozani Masilela. I'm the Director for Plastics from Department of Trade, Industry and Competition in a branch called Industrial Development and Growth. My portfolio revolves around the development of policies, strategy for the plastic industry. That includes the work that we're doing on the plastic master plan, which is still in a draft form. I represent the TIC in a number of forums or structures. That includes the Plastic SA Board. Thanks, Michael.
And then last but certainly not least, Professor Linda Godfrey of the CSIR.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Michael. Yes, I'm a principal scientist at the CSIR and manager of the Waste Research Development and Innovation Roadmap Implementation Unit. So I always like to say I don't have any particular skin in the game when it comes to plastics. So it's very much around evidencing this discussion and the role that the research community can play. I think from the 2 days we've seen this as a very complex issue to address, so evidence is imperative to decision making in this process. And I think as a scientist I also like to ask those difficult questions and sometimes play devil's advocate. So it's great to be part of the panel, so thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Godfrey. We look forward to you playing devil's advocate on the panel as well, because that's really the only way we're going to move forward sustainably around this issue. Now, as a first issue statement, obviously improving the design of plastic products to facilitate greater circularity at the end of life is really an important starting point in addressing the plastic waste problem. So, Kavinian, starting with you, because I'd really like to understand how Unilever is thinking about this. What do you see as being new solutions with respect to product design or new business models that can radically transform the way we think about and manage plastic?
Yeah, look, if you talk about, before we talk about new solutions, I think there's still a lot of room for old solutions that have proven effective, time and time again, that have sort of become obsolete over a period of time. But I think, if you look at nature as a start and biomimicry, nature in itself is there's a beautiful perfection to the way nature, the system works. So I think there's a lot that we need to learn, a lot that we need to adapt from nature itself. How do we better fit into the system itself without also taking out of it? So there's a lot of disruption that we bring as well, and there's a lot of imbalance that we put into it. So I think that's one of the routes that we take. And then looking at some of the new solutions, I think there's a lot of hype around refilleries, reuse, returnables. And again, I think the core of these models are decades, if not centuries old, right? And the good example of this is the milkman model, right? And if you looked at the milkman model, for me, it was an awesome solution because, you got your product delivered to your home, you consumed the product, it was delivered in a sustainable, reusable packaging format, and it was replenished once the product was consumed, and the loop is closed. So I think, again, these are solutions and things that we are looking at. It's not to say, really, I wouldn't call it something new, but I think we sort of scaling it up, digitizing it, making it more effective in today's environment. To answer on design, I think, when you talk about circularity and the circular economy, for me personally, it becomes very overwhelming. And I think for us as a business as well, if we're honest, I think it does become overwhelming at times. because there's a lot of good intentions. We want to impact the industry as a whole, and we want to try and fix problems, etc. But I think if we really narrow it down, the impact that we make is in terms of our products and how we design our products. So there's lots of collaboration that we do with the industry, in terms of the recyclers, the converters, the reclaimers. But it's about us drawing those insights and building that into our product, right? And it's about building the product for today's infrastructure and for today's system, because we can't wait for this sort of utopian type world to exist. Because I can make the argument that all of my products are recyclable, right? But effectively, are they being recycled? Are there markets for it? In many cases, no. So that's really, I think, where we need to focus, and we need to really build for the infrastructure that exists today. I think, yeah, and I think the last thing is, we sort of, I think we need to move away from falling in love with some of our solutions. It's probably not just Unilever, but I think in a lot of instances you can become too sort of obsessed with your own solution and think vertically, whereas we need to think within the system. And I think in terms of changing that mindset, if you do something great, you have a great story, and you can change mindsets in that way.
There's an old saying in Stats 101, update your priors. As new information becomes available, you've got to update your prior assumptions about these things. When we look from the retailer's perspective, Kevin, how do you see new solutions with respect to product design or new business models that can really speak to this issue of transforming the way we think about and manage plastic waste?
Thanks, Michael. And I obviously thought quite long and hard about how to answer this question, and I've decided to maybe take a different tack and maybe take a little bit of a step back. Because innovative packaging design, responsible use of plastic, recycling, reusing, they're all really practical solutions to the problems that we as business face, we as society faces. And with correct science, technology, and research, we can achieve change and begin to reverse the negative impact that we have on our environment. But we will only make a significant impact, I think, if we work together as a collective. Manufacturers, retailers, society, government, and any other relevant organizations. But the stumbling block is the transparent execution of why we do things. Why do we all want to address the problem of plastic waste? What is our reason? At SPAR, and our starting point is an unwavering commitment to 6 core principles. The first one being to seek a system solution to the problem. Secondly, research and development to understand the entire system, not one part of it that we happen to maybe benefit out of. Thirdly, to drive the circular economy thinking. Fourth, traceability and responsible sourcing of whatever product it is and whatever packaging it is. Focus on communication and education, as that is severely lacking, particularly in the consumer world, as to why these things are important and what they actually mean. And then, of course, for any brand, your brand is sacrosanct. So the reason we do this is not to look good so that people can buy more stuff from us. But we do it because we're committed to a sustainable future. And we can't do this on our own. No one can do this on their own. So do we have all the answers and all the solutions? No, we don't. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely. All the time. Do we have a lot still to do in this area? Very much so. But then I guess that goes for every one of us. We still have a lot to do. So my answer to this is trying to just take the thought process back as to why we do things. Because we can find many, many reasons that we need to question in the traditional way of which we've addressed these types of problems. And often those very reasons are the stumbling blocks to us making a meaningful impact in the way in which we need to. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. And then, Kirsten, just from the plastics pack perspective, how are you thinking about this issue of product design?
Thanks so much, Michael. And I think I want to emphasize there what Kevin brought up is the need for collaboration. First of all, to address our why. Why are we specifically highlighting the need for a circular economy for plastics? And I think that's a very important place to start, because it does impact and affect the way we then design our systems within our own businesses, as well as the way we work in a collaborative. So I think we're going to get onto more of a system type question a bit later, but just in terms of product design and business models, I like the emphasis up front that when we move towards a circular economy and when we're assessing the current plastics that we do use, that we first of all need to consider what do we need to eliminate. That this isn't how do we tweak a current system and how do we tweak our current products and materials, but it's actually a reassessment in terms of the materials we've put to market. And if we then move on to the product itself, so elimination being one of the first steps we need to consider, do we really need to use this resource? But then I think in product design and business models is that thinking what exactly, and going then again to Kevin's why, but more on the product or service level, what is exactly the offering that we have for our customers? What do we want to present? And can we present it in a way which is far more resource efficient so that we are addressing the economic, social, and environmental imperatives that we currently see are driving us towards a circular economy? So this could look like innovation in product, such that you can move away from some of the packaging, for example. It could look at innovation in materials, looking at alternative materials within packaging or product, and then again in the business model, for example, a reusable system for packaging. So those are just some of my comments on the product design and business model. And then we can chat further about system change, I think.
And it ties into what we saw in the research from Nikki Van Hille earlier about what consumers are asking for in terms of product design around yogurt tubs, and something that's a little bit 2x4 in shape and not as deep. And so I guess, and tagged onto that, Kevin, to bring you back into the conversation on that point, obviously there are changes to product design, but in addition to that and new business models, we also need new system designs, don't we? What are the kinds of system changes needed that should accompany these new product designs or new business models? And I'm thinking here of things like alternative delivery methods, because it needs an entire rethink.
Yeah, so look, I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to create value post-consumer and post-consumption of our products. We need to create that type of value. So once a product is consumed, there needs to be value. I think the second thing is we need to continue to innovate with the industry, right? And this is when I talk about the industry, again, I speak about converters, recyclers, reclaimers, resin producers, etc. Right? And maybe I'll share an example in terms of the role we play specifically and how we kind of drive the industry forward here. We had a recycler, looking back 24 months ago, right? That was producing pipes and tubes and essentially downcycling. Fast forward some 18 months later, we now have a material that we can use in our products, right? So how does this now, help the industry as a whole? How does this improve collection? How does this improve the design of the system, right? Because it's all well and good for Unilever that now we have this additional supply. But I think what it does create and what it drives forward is that it's now created an additional market for the recycler, right? The downstream impact of that is it now creates an increase in demand for feedstock, which means the reclaimers and the collectors now collect more, right? And probably collect a different type of material that they were collecting before, and that's not going to the landfill anymore. So the downstream impact is quite significant as well. Where I think it gets exponential is that what we're doing is, yes, we're putting in this investment, the time, the resources behind it, the trial and error to get it there. But what we do is once, the market's open, once it's proven, this can now be taken to the rest of the market because there's no restraint of trade. This is now a product that can be sold or material that can be sold to essentially our competitors and the rest of the industry. So I think that's really the critical role that we play because this is a lot of the stuff that happens in the background that really isn't seen at the forefront. But critical work that needs to happen, and someone's got to do it. And I think, we play an invaluable role in making that happen and driving the industry forward.
And I think in systems design, it is often very difficult to run a small pilot and to understand all of the possible externalities. With that, Kevin, your thoughts, again, from the retailer's perspective here on the kind of systems design thinking that we might need to employ in order to embrace this new model?
Yeah, I think the whole idea of systems is something, and the understanding of a system is something which we may not always understand and we may not always be skilled in. But without a doubt, to understand the entire system, how it works, what it includes, and what the pain points are in various parts of the system is really key before you make a decision on how you are going to involve yourself in improving the system. Because we, as business, are very good at improving the part of a system that makes us better. That does not necessarily improve the entire system. What we've got here from a circular economy thinking point of view is that we need to understand what happens within it. We need to understand how we are going to work together as competitors, as up and down a supply chain, because if we are driven by wanting to improve the system, we need to understand that there is no way one of us is going to be able to do that on our own. None of our brands are big enough to do that. But as a collective of people who have an interest and are driven by the reason why we're doing this, and we work together, and it's that working together which is the challenge. Because traditional thinking within business is that you come into a situation like that, often with a preconceived idea of what you want out of it. Working together in this instance is an understanding of once you're in the system, once you're in the collective's reason becomes the reason. And that is a very different way of thinking from a business point of view and very challenging. Okay, but, and I think that we all struggle with that. But therein lies the key for an improvement that is needed within what we refer to as a system around plastics and around waste, around packaging, whatever it might be even around food waste. It could be around any particular issue that is a big issue that faces all of us for the future. The only way we are able to really impact that is if we truly understand the importance of, first of all, understanding the system, and that's where research is critically important. And secondly, then realize that we can only improve the entire system by working together. We cannot do it on our own. Thank you.
Linda Godfrey is certainly one who's going to advocate for a lot more of understanding of the systems that we're operating within. But before I get ahead of myself, Kirsten, what kind of system changes are needed here when we think of system changes that are going to accompany product design and new business models and new delivery methods?
Thanks so much, Michael. I was going to just throw this straight at Linda with your intro there, but I will address it myself. I think this is a very important question to start the conversation on. And I'd like to re-emphasize a number of areas in which we're looking at system redesign. And it is system redesign. We want to emphasize again, we're not looking at tweaking a current system. We can't optimize something here and increase an efficiency there and be able to move towards an economically, environmentally, and socially sound system, it does need redesign. We need to rethink and redesign the way our materials flow through our economy. We need to change the way we interact with those resources and materials as people and organizations. And we also need to change the way we do business or do organization, whatever that might look like. Because as Kevin emphasized, and I'm going to reiterate that again, is that collaboration to achieve these very ambitious goals of a circular economy for plastics is key. There's no one organization, there's no one sector that can achieve this on its own. And I think often the errors that we see from individual companies is when faced with some of this information, and Kevin also did reference it, is that it can be a bit overwhelming. So the knee-jerk response is to pick a certain product that we can maybe look at improving recyclability, or a packaging type that we can focus on looking at inclusion of recycled content. And often it's in response to what the consumer pressure looks like at the time. But if we think circular economy and thinking of redesigning the way materials flow through our economy, the way we interact with those materials as people, it's very key that we do take that step back and we do look at, within your organization, start there. Consider all the resources that are currently used and are sort of inflows to your business model. First of all, consider, is this resource really needed to deliver what we want to deliver? And here I think it really almost pushes back on organizations to think again about their vision, their reason for being. Why are we here? And what is the greater purpose? So then you rethink in terms of, do we actually need this resource? Once you've considered the resource in your business, and here we are talking plastics, we then consider, is there a better way to access this raw material? Is there a better way, a renewable source of my resource that we could then use within the business model? And already in South Africa, we do see inclusion of some plant-based polymers. So I'll keep myself to the traditional polymers here. So we see a renewably sourced polymer entering the system. And I think, and Thokozani and I have had conversations around this as well. And I think in our country, there's been quite a focus on our just energy transition and the imperative to move away from fossil fuel-based energy and increase our proportion of renewable energy, with the ideal being in the long term that we are powered on renewable energy. And we've spoken about, we haven't really considered our just material transition in conjunction, in association with that just energy transition. Because obviously the energy transition will change the way we sort of procure energy, the way the feedstocks for energy, as I lose some words there. But if you look at our plastics, largely sourced from coal and gas, this has to have an impact, and that those two transitions need to be considered in conjunction. So I would say rethink those materials, rethink what those inputs would be. And then again, I would emphasize, along with Kevin, that this does mean involving the value chain. You can't rethink your inputs without taking your value chain on the journey with you. And you need to think upstream. You need to think, how can we work together on this journey towards a circular economy for plastics? How can we innovate together on this journey? And then you do need to think downstream. Gone are the days where we can put products or deliver services and only think of our organization's role in that process, and then completely disconnect from any possible impacts in the downstream. So I think it's very key that we form these collaborative working groups almost to consider certain issues. And yeah, I'm just enjoying already the collaboration, the insights shared on this call.
And really, that is the circular economy at its heart. By understanding the whole and your part within that whole,